You walk out to your tomato plants on a Tuesday morning, coffee in hand, and something's off. The leaves, they're turning yellow. Not all of them. Not from the edges, but right in the middle between the veins. The veins stay green, the rest goes pale, almost lime-colored. You already fed them last week. You watered on schedule. You did everything the tag on the transplant said to do. So you drive to the garden center. The person in the orange apron walks you over to a $14 bottle of tomato special formula and says your plants probably need a nutrient boost. You buy it. You use it. Maybe it helps a little. Maybe it doesn't. Here's the thing. Nobody in that store told you. A 5-pound bag of Epsom salt at the drugstore, $4.89, contains the exact compound your plants were screaming for. Magnesium sulfate, same molecule, a fraction of the price, and it's been sitting on that pharmacy shelf the whole time. Garden centers aren't lying to you, exactly, but they're also not going to hand you a $4 solution when they're trying to move $14 product. That's just business. This video is not business. So let's talk about what Epsom salt actually does, when it genuinely works, when it absolutely doesn't, and what dosage actually matters. Because most people who try this get the amount wrong and either see nothing happen or make things worse. That yellowing pattern I described, green veins, yellow leaf, has a name: interveinal chlorosis. It shows up most reliably on tomatoes, peppers, and roses when the plant can't pull enough magnesium from the soil. Magnesium is what holds chlorophyll together. Not a metaphor, literally. Every single chlorophyll molecule has a magnesium atom at its center. When that supply drops below what the plant needs, photosynthesis starts to fail. The green drains out, starting in the spaces between veins, because that's where the tissue is furthest from the plant's vascular supply lines. Here's where it gets complicated. The soil around your house might already have plenty of magnesium in it. The problem is that calcium and potassium, two things many gardeners dump on generously, compete with magnesium for root uptake. You can have sufficient magnesium in the ground and still have a deficient plant if you've been heavy-handed with other fertilizers. A researcher at the University of Massachusetts Extension called this induced deficiency. The nutrient is there. The plant just can't get to it because it's being crowded out at the root level. This is the mistake almost everyone makes. They see yellow leaves and they go buy more fertilizer, more calcium, more potassium. They make the problem worse and don't understand why. What actually helps in that situation is giving magnesium a direct path in. Foliar spray. Dissolve 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt per gallon of water and apply it directly to the leaves. The stomata absorb it. You bypass the root competition entirely. Within 7 to 10 days on a genuinely magnesium-deficient plant, you will see the new growth come in green and healthy. That's not magic. That's just chemistry working the way it's supposed to. Most people who know about Epsom salt in the garden fixate on the magnesium. The other half of the molecule is sulfur, and it does something different, something that most gardening videos don't bother explaining. Sulfur is what makes garlic taste like garlic. It's what gives crucifers, cabbage, broccoli, kale, their bitterness and their antioxidant compounds. When your soil is low in sulfur, those plants grow, but they're flat, nutritionally weaker, less pungent. They look fine, but they're not producing what they're supposed to produce at full capacity. Beyond flavor, sulfur feeds the sulfur-reducing bacteria in your soil. Those bacteria are part of the breakdown chain that makes other nutrients bioavailable. The late agronomist William Albrecht at the University of Missouri wrote extensively in the 1950s about sulfur as an overlooked soil amendment, largely because it doesn't produce the dramatic visible response that nitrogen does. No sudden burst of green, no fast growth spurt. It works quiet and slow in the microbial layer. Most suburban soils are low in sulfur. This is partly because acid rain, which used to deposit sulfur compounds, has been reduced dramatically over the past 30 years thanks to clean air regulations. Good for the atmosphere. Unintended consequence. A lot of garden soil that used to get supplemented passively no longer does. 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt per gallon applied as a soil drench once a month during the growing season covers both the magnesium and the sulfur base for most heavy-feeding vegetable plants. Not every week, once a month on the soil drench. The foliar spray you can do every 2 weeks during the season, especially on tomatoes and peppers after they start setting fruit. Write that down if you're taking notes. Once a month on the soil, every 2 weeks on the leaves. Those are the numbers that actually work. This is the part garden influencers skip because it complicates the message, but you should know it. Sandy, well-draining soils lose magnesium fast. If your garden bed is mostly sand or gravel mix, monthly applications are probably fine and maybe even conservative. But if you have dense clay soil that holds moisture and nutrients well, and you've been adding Epsom salt for 2 or 3 years without a soil test, you may actually have too much magnesium by now. Excess magnesium in clay soil blocks calcium uptake. Calcium is what keeps cell walls strong. It's what prevents blossom end rot in tomatoes. That black, sunken bottom on the fruit that looks like disease but is usually a calcium issue. If you've been treating blossom end rot with more calcium and still seeing it, and you've also been adding Epsom salt heavily, there's a real possibility those two things are working against each other. A basic soil test, the kind your state cooperative extension office processes for about $15 to $20, will tell you your magnesium and calcium levels in actual numbers. If your magnesium is already adequate, stop adding it. Use plain sulfur dust instead, which addresses the sulfur side without adding more magnesium. The people who say Epsom salt is a miracle and the people who say Epsom salt is a myth are both right about different gardens. It depends entirely on what's already in your soil and what you're growing. So here's where you actually are after this. You've got a $4 bag of Epsom salt that genuinely helps tomatoes, peppers, roses, and sulfur-hungry crops, if your soil needs it. You've got 2 application methods: foliar spray every 2 weeks, soil drench once a month. You've got the warning to get a soil test before going heavy-handed on clay. That's more than most gardeners know walking into their garden center. But there's a follow-up question this raises, and it's one I want to dig into next time. If magnesium deficiency is this common and this easy to fix, why do big fertilizer labels never list the actual magnesium content in a way that's meaningful? The number is there on the bag. Middle number of the NPK is phosphorus, the third is potassium. But magnesium is often buried in fine print as a secondary nutrient, not because it matters less, because it's cheap to source and hard to mark up. Next video, we're going inside the fertilizer label. What those 3 numbers actually mean, which one most home gardeners are already over-applying, and why the balanced fertilizers on the shelf are often the worst option for a mature garden. If you've used Epsom salt in your garden and seen real results, or if you tried it and saw nothing, drop that in the comments. I want to know what you were growing and what your soil type looked like. That information is actually useful, and I read every one of those.